Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today as we discuss managing the relationship between credit and sales.
Hello, my name is Marissa Minter. I am with the marketing team at LevelSet. No, I am not a speaker for today, but I'm just here to give a quick overview of LevelSet and what we do, and I'll stay on throughout the webinar if you have any questions about LevelSet. If you're on this webinar, you already know that in the construction industry, getting paid is not always the easiest thing. LevelSet exists to make it easier for contractors, suppliers to get paid the money that they're owed. So we have subscription-based software that helps you with your lien rights management paperwork. We have legal services, materials financing, and our website has tons of free educational resources all about protecting your lien rights and just helping contractors get paid faster. You can find more information on our website that's up on the screen. And after this webinar, we will also send out an email where you can request more information.
As we mentioned today, we do have a panel of some great experts that have been in their fields at least 15, 20 years. They have people that work under them, so they know what the training side is to teach them to deal with sales. They've had the experience to deal with sales. And a lot of them have been able to build and mend those relationships, that unfortunately not everybody can handle. So they have some very good ideas and tips for you to share in regards to sales and credit. Rachel, would you want to start and just kind of introduce yourselves?
Sure thing. My name is Rachel Sales. I'm the Senior Director of Credit here at SRS Distribution. We are the third largest roofing distributor in the United States, and I have been here 2 years. Prior to that, I was somewhere else. So I have 16 years experience in the roofing / contractor based industry.
Thank you, Rachel, for taking time to join us today as well.
Sure thing.
Hey, Jackie, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I was in the field of credit collections for about 25 years, and I'm still in it, but I'm not a credit manager anymore. Now I'm more in the role of helping credit managers in my role. But I have a lot of great experience that will hopefully lend itself to this conversation.
Thank you again. Hey, Lisa, do you want to tell us a little about yourself?
Sure. I'm Lisa Guess. I've been in the credit industry about 14 years. I have been a credit manager on an individual contributor basis. I've been a part of a 12-person credit manager team. I've led credit teams up to 6 people at a time. I'm currently in a new role, starting a credit department from the bottom and kind of making it my own. My prior life was in the banking industry about 10 plus years, but that banking experience has definitely helped me in the credit world, but I'm excited to be here with you all today.
Thank you again. And Sam, he's with Ferguson. Do you want to tell us a little about yourself?
Yeah, Sam Lewis, Ferguson Enterprises. I'm the regional credit manager here in Texas over the state of Texas for plumbing, building, HVAC. I've been with Ferguson for about 8.5 years, and that is my extent in credit. A little hearing all those years out there make me a little nervous, so I'll try not to let you all down.
You got fresh perspective.
Yeah, that's what we'll call it.
All of you for taking time out today. Do you want to go on to the next slide? This is what we're going to talk about today, like I said, as well as anything that you bring up in the chat or that might stem off from some of the questions. But initially, we're going to talk about why issues often arise between credit and sales. Everybody knows it. It's always been an issue. How to manage conflict with your sales department. And that goes back the other direction too. I know we have some salespeople on this call, but how to manage the conflict with your credit person as well. Ways to have positive conversations between sales and credit and with the customers. If they know you're on the same side, it definitely usually helps in all communication that goes with them. And we'll be, like I said, taking audience questions throughout the presentation. If anybody wants to kind of kick us off, just what you've seen or heard that are the top issues between credit and sales.
Well, I'll start us off. So, let's break down the sales and credit, like simplify it. So the sales professional's responsibility is pretty much to gain new business, manage your existing customers. When they have an interest in a product, you go sell it. You try to sell them all your products available in your portfolio. And then you've got a credit professional. I'm just going to simplify our job because there's so much that we do as well. We evaluate the risk and decide, can we afford to sell this customer? So when you have those two dynamics going on, certain situations arise or certain issues arise because you've got a sales professional that has passion, credit person with their passion, and that sometimes issues arise out of that. Sometimes lack of communication can also be an issue that could arise. Not understanding each other's sense of urgency sometimes, I think, plays a role in that as well. Panel, what about any other issues that you think come about that relationship between sales and credit?
I think another issue is definitely not only understanding the urgency, but not even having a full understanding of everything that they're being asked to do or that we're being asked to do. So sometimes there's competing directives. I know that in different, situations we've had, the sales team is asked to go out and get as many credit applications as they can. So they're digging under every single rock they can find somebody. And then we get them and we're like, well, we can't, they just don't meet the criteria that we're looking for. So it's hard because they're being pushed, to get a volume. But we're being told, hey, watch, make sure we're not extending credit, to people that obviously have, issues with payments. And so I think that's some of it, competing objectives. I think another thing that I've seen in my different areas that I've handled is that sometimes they have a really bad experience with a previous credit team or credit manager, and then they project that onto the new person, that they haven't even dealt with yet. They just have this preconceived notion that it's just not going to go well. So those are some of the things I've seen.
That's true. And I think also we speak two different languages, right? So unless we figure out, to Lisa's point, how to communicate better, it's really hard to resolve any issues. And a lot of times we're asking them for something they don't even understand. They don't even know what you're talking about. They don't know. So sometimes at the risk of, sometimes they feel like you're being condescending, but really I always try to preface it by saying, hey, I'm not trying to be condescending. And if I'm telling you something you already know, stop me, because I don't want to be insulting. I want to make sure they understand clearly why we're asking them specific questions.
Yeah, and I think what I see a lot is two very different perspectives on the same thing, right? When you look at it from a P&L perspective, you have sales who are going after top line revenue, while credit tends to be more so concerned about bottom line profitability, when we all should be looking in the middle, because at the end of the day, there's risk associated with doing business on credit, and we're not going to get paid on everything. So I think an understanding of us living in that gray, and the sales associate understanding that we need to go into the transaction, with the assumption that we want to be paid. So there's that middle ground we need to meet in for us to have that successful relationship.
Yeah. Hey, Brian, would you want to join in a little bit and let us know if you have any things that you've actually heard with people having issues dealing directly with credit, since you're coming from the sales side? Maybe he's not on right now. Okay, well, we'll just go on from there. What are some things that you've done to help kind of keep the peace between credit and sales, kind of like a over the top sort of thing instead of specific issue?
Well, I do a lot of one-on-one conversations with my sales professional. I make sure they understand that I'm there to support them. It's my job to find a way to make the sale happen or this deal to happen. So that's kind of how I try to have to manage that conflict between if anything arises. I do my best to support everything that they do. I make sure they understand also how do I operate? If I get an application or a job sheet, how long is it going to take me to handle certain things? Oh, if it comes to me having to hold the order. I'll deliver the message. I want you to be the good person, the good guy in front of the customer. Let me be the bad guy. Let me deliver the difficult news, handle the difficult conversations. But long as they know my passion is the same as them, we all want the same things. Let's just kind of communicate together and work together to make things better. So those are kind of some of the ideas of what I've done to kind of manage that.
I would agree with you, Lisa. I think it's key to make sure the salespeople know that we're on the same team. We want the same thing. Part of our jobs as credit professionals is to grow that business and get paid for it. We all want the same end goal. So I think for our part, one thing I always tried to do was make sure I kind of had a hospitable environment, because sometimes they don't want to come in your office. So I try to make it hospitable, by just making sure there's some candy on the desk or something easy, or just also taking all the personal feelings out of anything can deflate a conflict. Like I try not to use pronouns like you or he or I or anything like that in a conversation or emails. So that they can't even perceive that I'm being personal. So I try to take out all the personal feelings and make them feel comfortable and make sure they know that we're on the same team.
Yeah. In terms of extreme, we've had some credit versus sales events just to lighten up. We've had some tournaments, basketball, baseball, different events that we do together, but, just being present and active in meetings. A lot of sales meetings kind of go over a lot of credit professionals' heads, but you may pick up on one or two initiatives that you can in turn be a little more proactive in terms of partnering with them. So just being there, being present, being visible helps a lot.
That's a great point, Sam. I was in a dunking booth one time. The salespeople really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
I've never heard of that.
bet.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we threw a pie in the face event and we let showroom consultants pie their managers in the face. So it was a win-win for me. I got all the money donated and I got to see their managers getting pied in the face. So.
That's awesome. That's hilarious. Kind of taking off that, have any of you or have you heard of anybody ever trying to do contests with their sales, saying, whoever turns in the most complete job sheets for the month, gets something, just kind of like a nice thing to play with them and kind of something different to not make it so miserable.
Yeah, I've done that. And they because they're competitive by nature, right? And so are we, by the way. So I think there's a lot of similarities between credit and collection personalities and sales personalities. We have to have a lot of those common things. And but I would keep a board on the wall outside my office to show who had the best percent current for their portfolio, and best DSO. And they really liked that. And then I would give them it didn't have to be any big prize, but just something to say, hey, I appreciate your effort. They like that. And so do we, for the collectors.
Yeah. Absolute. The competition is always the funnest part of it.
Yeah.
Does anyone else want to answer on the fun stuff for the sales or anything?
Like I said, we've done some cool stuff. Go ahead, Rachel.
Oh, no, go ahead. It's fine.
No, just reiterating, we've done some fun things and some of the simple, I think the prize is just secondary to the competition, like was being said, but something as simple as lunch. People love food. So buy them lunch or take them out for a beer, something as simple as that.
Agreed.
No, all I was going to say is I haven't been anywhere where we've done contests, but we have been trying to be definitely proactive. The sales team always feels like we're always saying no. Their perception is we're always saying no. Even if we say yes 100 times, it doesn't matter. Like if we say yes 100 and we say no 5, they remember that we said no 5 and they think it was 100. So what we always, and I've challenged my teams You know, and it's a little bit of a shift, you know, for some of them too, depending on where they're coming from. But when you do have to say no to your salesperson, if you are familiar enough with their portfolio and who their customers are, maybe you can sweeten the no with, okay, I can't open this customer for a credit line, but I can give this other customer an increase. Or, you know, you go to them with, you know, I'm having to say no on this, you know, and this is why, or, you know, it's just really not a good idea. But hey, I found these other 3 customers that are, you know, have been doing really well. Let's give them an increase. And then you can go be the hero to your customer and say, hey, I got you a credit line increase, you know, and it gives them something positive to go talk to the customer about. They see that we really are trying to help them and that we're not just always negative all the time. We've had a really good response from that. So it's not really a contest, but we're still trying to give them, you know, a positive thing coming from the credit department rather than always negative.
Absolutely.
And I would like to add on that, ways to have positive conversations. Like even when I have to say no, which we try not to and we don't want to, explain to them. Sometimes it helps the sales professional know if you explain why it's a no. And then if I have to give a no, if I can also give them other options, like it's a no today, but maybe in 90 days or 6 months, I can take a fresh look at it and see what's wrong with us, how they establish credit with us, give them options of, hey, maybe I need to look at their financials. Maybe they need a letter of credit, different things or maybe I need to look at their financials. There's some options, and sometimes giving them options, let them know that you're not just saying no, you're still thinking of ways to make this work for them.
That's a great answer and a good segue, like you said, Lisa, to that next question. I feel very much like you do. And in fact, I always would take it a little bit further than that and say, I'm trying to find a way to say yes. You help me figure out how I can say yes. Because, a lot of times the salespeople, they don't even really know what we need to know. So there were many times where, I was having a discussion and I'm saying, well, they don't have any experience even. I mean, there's nothing here. Oh no, they own 20 other locations but you didn't know that because it wasn't on the application, right? Or it wasn't anywhere in any paperwork. So I would always just try to say, I want to say yes. You're gonna have to do your job and sell me on this too, because I know you already sold the customer, but sell me because I don't have enough information here. Help me say yes. And that would kind of take them down a little bit of a rabbit hole with me, but it helped them understand more of why we need the information that we need. Like, what do we need to know? They think we just know, and we don't.
That's true. I always think people are in my head and they know exactly what I'm going to say.
Exactly.
I'm curious, with some of the other people that are involved, do we have any questions or anything right now that we can answer? Do we have any feedback from the people that are on the webinar? I mean, just so far on what they've heard, or?
I haven't got that yet. I do have a couple salespeople are on here. One works with Lisa, so he's learning how to talk with you, I guess.
Hello.
I have had a previous question that just says, how can a longtime credit manager salvage a relationship that has been poor for a long time? Any suggestions on that?
I think with that, it's building trust. They have to trust you, and it's going to take time. I've been in that situation, and that's what it really boils down to. You have to find ways, getting out there, and if it's possible to meet with them in person and have them take you to their customers so that you can show them that you can be trusted with their customers. And the trust is a two-way street too. I mean, from the sales side, maybe we do share with them more of what we're seeing than we normally would, because some of that information is confidential and we have to be very careful. But if we can give them more of an explanation, then, and and give them some wins sometimes. Like if they feel like they're winning, then maybe they would have a different attitude towards it. I don't know if anybody else has other feedback, but I mean, sometimes it's a long road to recovery on that. And it's just about building trust, and it's just one day at a time.
Yeah.
There's no
I
easy
agree.
fix.
I agree, Rachel. Definitely like personal visits, one-on-one conversations, take a trip for a week and go visit your customers definitely was a good suggestion. Because it seems that gets you one-on-one time. You go out and have a dinner afterward. You see how they interact with their customers. They see how you interact with their customers. I mean, that always is helpful. And then maybe you may need to try to do a little extra work for them. Like for what I'm talking about is maybe work with that sales professional. Hey, before you go out and see someone, give me a call. Let me help you do some background work for you so you know what type of game plan you need to have going in there. And then the more they see you working on their behalf, I think helps the situation. But like Rachel said, it takes time, it takes effort, it takes work, it takes mutual respect from both sides to build that relationship and build that rapport.
I agree with that. It takes a long time. And sometimes I found, because gosh, when you're in a specific business segment, it's a small world, right? Salespeople go from business to business, and so do credit managers. Sometimes you run into each other more than one time. So you've got to mend those fences. And sometimes it just kind of takes a really honest conversation to say, look, we've had this relationship and it's not always been easy, but I personally have told a guy in the past, I'm going to find something to love about you. I don't know what that is yet, but I'm going to find it and we're going to work this out, and so I just kind of took ownership of it, even though it was a two-way street, right? But I'm okay with that, and you just have to say, look, I know it's been hard, and just kind of put it out there. And I think sometimes they appreciate that because they think you're just being stubborn and you're not. So just kind of be real honest with them sometimes. They're thick skinned, just like we are, and they can take it for the most part. But then again, like everybody else said, it just takes time and doing what you say you're going to do so they can trust you. And, the proof is in the pudding, right? Once it's done, they'll look back and go, oh, okay, she really does get it. She understands. Or he.
Or he.
I would really just add a couple of things to that, and great points made. Is being consistent and reliable. Do what you say you're going to do. Be accessible, because we know these sales opportunities can come out of nowhere. So even if it might not go the way they want it to, they need to, I think sometimes it's more about how you do something than what you're actually doing. So we need to show them the effort we're making and that the intention is to make the sale, but it doesn't always go that route. So celebrate those wins as well, make them obvious so they know that, we might, I think a lot of times we're more so focused on the bad than the good. Let's highlight some of those wins so they see that, it's in the back of their mind just as much as those losses maybe.
Right. I wanted to share one fun thing I just thought of that I had done. I used to attend sales meetings all the time, right? Because it's good too, right? I mean, it's good to have some interaction with them. But I would make up games for them, and one time I did like Credit Jeopardy. So it was this board. I mean, we spent a lot of time making this game, and one category was credit terms, and you'd have all your credit terms and just different terminologies. So it was kind of fun for them, and because they want to win, right? And then giving a prize. It just kind of trying to be more creative. We're all so busy. It's really hard sometimes to think fun and creatively because we're busy. But in the end, it does pay off. Fun.
I love that, Jackie. If I was still in credit, I would absolutely do that sometime.
Yeah.
I love it. I do have 2 comments to all panelists. Pete says, face-to-face takes it to the next level, and like you said, builds trust with the sales rep and customer. Good comments, panelists. Valerie states, when my boss worked in credit with GE, he was the only credit person who would have lunch with the sales team and really built a relationship between both teams. It really helped to get sales and credit to work together as a team than as usually sales would think. Credit's always against us, yes. Or at least that's how it was perceived when I was in credit. It's important to let them understand why you need documents signed properly to ensure the company is protected down the road. We are both trying to do our jobs, and it just takes a little give and take on both sides. Thank you for that, Valerie.
True.
If anyone else has any comments or questions, please go ahead and put them down in the chat. Let's see, next question that I have is, do you find that most salespeople are open to learning?
It depends on how you approach them, I think. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah, and I do, and I think it depends on, like, I have been in situations where you, like, the younger sales team members, so the newbies, I think are they're like sponges, like they want to absorb it all. Whereas sometimes, as a company grows, or if they kind of change their viewpoint on where they want the company's direction to go, some of the seasoned salespeople, maybe a little harder to get them to change their perspective or what we want them to do. I don't think it's impossible. I think both the seasoned and the newer guys, are willing. In what I have seen, they want to know more. They want to understand. And if we seem eager to understand their side of it, again, it's just another two-way street. If we want to learn what they are, the expectations for what they have to do, it's a whole lot easier to get them to listen to what our expectations are. So, like, I always like to be invited, like, when they do sales training or branch manager trainings, like, I want to go, even if they're going to talk about stuff that really doesn't even pertain to me. I think it shows them, like, I want to know what they're telling you. I want to understand your side of it, because I can be more effective and my team can be more effective if I understand what's being asked of them, or, what's being put on them as far as, like, pricing, for instance, for us right now is huge. It's a big deal. There's all kinds of pricing increases. Well, that has an effect on credit, because people's credit lines aren't going to go as far as they used to if the pricing's all jacked up. So I need to know that, and my team needs to know that, because we've got to be able to adjust credit lines and understand that that's going to impact our department. And we really are so intertwined. And I think sometimes people forget that. So we don't get invited to meetings, or we don't get told stuff. And I think, pushing for that is a big deal. Like, I think there should be more interaction that's positive, so that when we do have to have a tough conversation, it goes a whole lot easier.
That's true.
To go back to the original question, I think for the most part, yes, most people want to know the right thing to do and do things right. It's on us to make sure they understand those expectations. So set those expectations clearly, and letting people know the expectations is important for us to do. I think we're always going to see those associates who are reluctant to change. And that's where, that's where I think we can partner with business leadership in terms of, how can we identify those associates and help support those associates. And, the ultimate tough question is, are they in the right position if they're not going in the direction that the company is going in? So I think for the most part, I'd answer your question and say most people want to learn how to do the right thing. It's just, it's on us to get them that information.
I agree with everyone. And sometimes it just takes different approaches, different ways to explain things. And you may have to explain the same thing to the same sales professional or employee over and over, but it's maybe that fourth time you've explained it where they get it. So we just got to be patient at sometimes with that, and just find different ways to explain the same thing over and over until they get what they need out of it. And I agree, sales meetings, those are so helpful, because that helps the credit team know what they're working on, what the focus is, and it prepares us so that we're not, caught behind the ball, like, oh, they've got this promotion going on, we're not ready for it. So that definitely, I agree with everyone on the panel that those have always been helpful.
One thing that's a little more construction specific, but kind of goes back to the same, you have salespeople that, like Rachel said, could be their seasoned salespeople or they could be brand new. Do most credit managers assume they know what you're talking about? Like you were having Credit Jeopardy. I worked for a company that I taught just did a little class for the salespeople on Texas lien law, why we say the 15th, why we do this, what these notices are. And I was surprised that nobody, even the seasoned ones, knew any of that. They didn't know why the credit manager asks for payment by the 14th, or why they're sending this notice or that one, or waivers. It was really surprising. So I'm just asking, just in general, do you think that credit people assume the salesperson is going to know what you're talking about, which obviously creates a language barrier right there?
I would
We
say
don't.
there's ebbs and flows in it. Again, did I interrupt you, Rachel?
No, it's hard to tell when someone's going to talk. So no,
It
please
is.
go ahead.
Yeah.
There you
No,
go.
I think it comes and goes. So for our organization, there's always a willingness to teach and learn. It's, with turnover, attrition, new associates coming on, it's always trying to capture those associates early on. That becomes the challenge. And that's where we see when we get a wave of new associates, making sure we have the training curriculum in place to get them the information they need to know. So, and it comes in waves, honestly, at certain points, I think this year has been a phenomenal year. So we've had people coming in consistently. So it's just been a consistent revolving door of training. Whereas in other years, it's been, less opportunities for new folks due to freezes. So a new associate may come that you might not hear about for a while, and then you don't hear about them until they make a mistake. So I think as soon as we get that information on those new associates, jumping out in front of them early that's when they're really wanting to learn the most on how to do the right thing. Someone said it earlier, when they're new, they're like sponges. So that's when we want to get them the information.
Absolutely.
One thing I've seen that I thought was one of the best things I've ever seen, one of the companies I work for, is we did the training for new salespeople, but they're just like us, right? When you're starting a new job, it's like taking a sip out of a fire hose, and your job, what you're telling them isn't the most important thing in their world. They've got to sell. So we would bring them back a year after they started and do advanced training. So then they were kind of more ready to absorb more from you, and they knew what they were supposed to be doing for the most part. But there's a lot of intricacies from the credit department that they didn't understand, or that it didn't make sense when you told them the first time, but now it does. And so that was one of the best things I've ever seen done. And I wish every company I ever worked for would do that, because I'm the same way. Anytime I've started a new job, if you tell me something in that next first 6 weeks, it's 50-50 shot it's going to stick. You're hearing terminology you never heard before. You don't know, it's all new. So that's one tactic I've seen used that I thought was great.
Mm-hmm. I like that a lot. Anybody else have anything to say on that? Let's see. No new questions there. So people are asking for examples. Do you have any example personally that you could give where you were butting heads with the salesperson and something, whether they did or you did, kind of mended it, and now your relationship kind of went smooth on from there?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jackie. What's your?
Well, I'll give the example that I was talking about earlier with the sales rep that I worked with at one company. And he was absolutely my most stressful part of the day. I knew at 4:00 on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, this guy was going to nearly give me a heart attack. Like, I just knew he would. It was so stressful because he would wait till the last minute. He did everything you were not supposed to do. Anyway, he left the company, and then I went to another company, and there he was, and I saw his picture on the wall, and I thought, oh my God, no. But I thought, okay, we're both in new positions now. I'm just going to have a conversation with him. And I just talked to him about it. He was a nice guy, but And I'm a nice person too. So I just said, look, I know we've butted heads so many times, but I'm going to find something to love about you. And we're going to have a better relationship this time. and we did. We still butted heads once in a while, but we could have a little bit more humor and openness about it instead of me wanting to kill him and him wanting to kill me. You know, I was like, we could at least laugh about it and say, oh my gosh, you're making me crazy. Call me when you have the information I want. So that's my example.
Anybody else?
Well, I have an example that happened on one of the teams I worked on. Is that there was a sales professional and a credit professional that they just didn't get along. Like in emails, you know, you can sense the tone. Like depending on who was reading, they had different tones in emails. If the sales professional had a question, they would never call the credit manager. They would always go around. So what happened was that, you know, we had some loss in staff. So I needed a credit professional to pick up a certain location, and it happened to be this location. Well, the one credit manager that pretty much did not get along with the sales professional, you know, volunteered to take the location. I was so shocked. Well, after this person took on that location, the relationship got so much better. They had to work together. It forced them to try to understand each other, get to know each other, understand, you know, how each other operates. And it was the best thing for them. So they both took accountability and ownership, but they had a discussion about, you know, we got to work together, but it ended up being the best thing for them. And ended up being a win after at the end of everything. So sometimes you just have to kind of, all right, we're going to do this, you know, and then we're going to work this out. And it did.
Sometimes it takes time and you just have to ride it out. Sam, you got any good stories?
A few. No, I think one that comes to mind is one of our larger customers several years ago. We were doing business with at the time, and I think when you think about the salesman on the account, it's kind of that stereotypical salesman you think about, who is probably the reason why we have calls like this. But he was a heck of a salesman. He'd push on anybody and everybody in the organization to get what he wanted for him and the customer. I mean, heck of an advocate for the customer. But he's the reason why I was employed, I feel like. So, it was a customer, one of our largest customers at the time. And, you know, we started to see him age out across the board, several projects. So we started obviously talking to other parties on the contract, and come to learn that he was using some of our funds to finance his lavish lifestyle. And it was pretty lavish. I've been to his penthouse downtown Houston. So, I had a solid relationship with the customer, and, had a good relationship with the sales guy, but it was always keeping you just at arm's length so he can get what he wants, but nothing in addition to that. When we found out that information, we started to push pretty aggressively on the account. Like, something's bound to tip over. You know, something's going to go wrong, and then the fire's going to go ablaze. So I started talking to some other partners and peers in credit and tried to come up with a good strategy to approach this account. That was a lot of sales volume, but a ton of risk. So came up with a plan, and it involved getting some pretty high level leadership within the organization involved. And we just had a conversation and made a decision as an entire group on the direction we wanted to go with the account. And that salesman was involved in the conversation. So I think the salesman, while he might not have liked where we were going, he understood the business direction with the decision, being that we took it so seriously and got so many different parties involved. He appreciated that more so than anything. He might not have liked the decision, but again, I go back to he appreciated to how we went about it. We involved the right parties, and this just wasn't, Sam coming down on the salesman because Sam wasn't getting paid as much fast as Sam liked. So.
Right. No, that's awesome. You raised your head there, Rachel. You have that kind of situation too?
Yes. I mean, I think where I have been able to change perspective the most, like when I'm butting heads with the salespeople, is when we are going to have a difficult conversation with the customer, and the salesperson is absolutely about to wet their pants because they do not want this conversation to happen. Like, they are terrified that we're going to lose the customer, like that they're going to run to the competition, that they're never going to speak to us. They're going to pull all their, or I mean, like this whole, like, it's drama. I mean, it's like drama. And so I'm like, no, it's going to be fine. And I've convinced them, to be present, but we have those difficult conversations with the customer, and the customer doesn't pull their business, and the customer is actually appreciative. The customer, like, there have been so many over the years situations where, and after the salesperson witnesses that and watches that, they really do, like, kind of have a different outlook and a different on the whole thing. Like, so when it comes up again, they're not scared to reach out to credit because they realize we really are trying to help the customer and help them. And so, I mean, I have countless examples, whether it be a conversation about lien rights or why we send a notice, or, like the customer didn't want to give their financials. And I'm like, and I explained to them, like, it's not a scary thing. Like, we're trying to get on board. We're like your bank. We're just like a bank. A bank's not going to loan you $2 million and not ask you for documentation. We're the same thing. We've got to make sure that we're making a good investment. I mean, that's what they're asking us to do, is invest in them. And so I think, and salespeople are good at selling. They're not always necessarily good at selling some of that, where we are used to having to sell the credit side of things. And so I think that's where we can really gain their trust, gain the customer's trust, and really stop the arguing, is just showing them, that we aren't going to harm the relationship, and that we can get, more information or have the tough conversation and not scare the customer away. So
I think that's always the biggest concern, is they just don't know how we're going to deal with somebody, and they get scared to risk it.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else want to throw out an example? Right from Pete real quick. I got spot on, Rachel. It took that experience to open my eyes. I do have 2 comments in here I was going to share with y'all. One's from Valerie. She said one thing she did to build trust with her sales team and branch managers was to work with them in other areas, kind of like cross training. She says, for example, we had to issue credits for old deductions, and while I could issue all of them at once, she worked with them so it wouldn't hurt their sales as much. They were so appreciative that moving forward, it was a lot easier for them to understand her no, as they knew it wasn't just to get out of doing something. So that is, I know that scares a lot of salespeople too, that are on the commission or payback. That's definitely a big issue. And then I have, this one doesn't say who it's from. It just says, thanks, Lori. Our sales teams like the monthly calls like you guys were talking about, so there are no surprises with their customers, and it keeps sales and credit aligned.
Yeah, that's a good point. We tell sales management a lot of times things that are important that are coming up, or changes to the credit policy. And sometimes the sales managers don't trickle that down to the salespeople, right? It creates a lot of problems. So it is good, like this person said, to get out there and keep them informed so they don't feel blindsided, because we don't like to feel blindsided either by them. So that is a really good point.
Mm-hmm.
I do have one more comment from Rovi. He was talking about the disconnect between sales and credit, which we talked about, but he was also saying that their salespeople really don't know the status of stuff. So having those conversations, letting them know when they're past due, subject to credit hold, need their support in collecting a past due. He says even especially in construction, it's until you understand what it is, they're not really able to talk to customers about it either.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see if I can think of any more questions. Looks like all the questions or comments that we have. Does anybody on the panel have anything else they just want to close with? No? Well, again, I thank you, Lisa, Jackie, Rachel, and Sam for taking time out today to do this. I know this is going to give a lot of people some great information. I want to thank Brian for hanging out in the background. Hopefully he can get us some more information from sales on kind of maybe some other stuffs we can work on that we didn't even discuss today yet. If anybody wants any additional information, you can email me directly. My email's on the presentation, and then you can also just go to levelset.com, and there's a lot of information as well as the community. We'd love for you to sign up for the community. I will go ahead and put that link in the chat box, and it would just get you all the bi-weekly newsletters that have all the different webinars and classes that are coming up. So since there's nothing else, just thank you, everybody. Thank you for those that joined us, and we look forward to seeing you next time.